Everyone, and welcome to today's show, the Beautifully Bruised and CPS show. Again, today is, we made it to see another week. Today is Friday, Freedom Friday. So I thank God that we are able to come back again on this platform to be able to come in front of you and hopefully share with you something that can be helpful, something that can help connect you to what's really going on out here in this world dealing with CPS, some of the stories that some of these families and their children are having to endure, unfortunately. And I do have a very, very exciting, worth your while story that's coming in today. She's actually a returning guest. And I want to say, Brittany, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. And thank you for our listening audience for listening today.
Yeah, I thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I am again, like I said, I've been a victim myself through CPS, and I know personally what it's like, and I know it's something that can change the trajectory of the rest of you and your children's life, because I am a witness of that's what happened to me as well as my child. So again, I just want to go ahead and dive right in. But first and foremost, I thank God, my Lord and Savior, for having us here today to bring these stories forth, to let people know in the world what's going on. Because like I shared with Brittany yesterday, I was always told that a closed mouth don't get fed. And if you don't speak up and share your truth and be transparency, a lot of these stories are just being, unnoticed. They're not being touched. They're being forgotten about. So I think the more we can come on this show, this platform with Attorney Vince, to be able to bring our truth to the airways, to people's story, to people your story. So I thank God for people like our producer Grace, someone that helps us to be in position to bring these stories that are really affecting people's lives and children's lives. So again, without getting going right into it today, I would like to go ahead and go right into her story. And like I say with Brittany, can you please just tell us, kind of backtracking from listening audience who wasn't aware of your previous story to bringing us all up to date. And with that being said, the first question I would like to ask you is, have your kids been taken by CPS?
Yeah, my children have been gone since December 17th of 2021.
Wow. Okay. They've been gone since December of 2021. Okay. With that being said, can you elaborate more as far as how old are your children? How old are your kids?
So my son will be 10 at the end of October, and my daughter will be turning 4 on in March of 2024.
So they're young children.
Yeah.
Um, when was the last time you've spoken with your kids?
June 23rd of 2022.
I'd like to ask you a personal question, Brittany, because I know when I went through, like I said, my encounter with CPS, you're going through the school holidays, you're going through when, kids are going back to school, you even, whatever it may be, Easter or, activities of the holidays where normally your children is why you go to work and provide for. Can I ask you, what is your experience like with going through these holidays, seeing other families with their children? What is your personal experience with this, with what CPS has divided with you and your family by not having your kids with you? What does it feel like?
Well, so I'd like to say it gets easier. It doesn't get easier. It just gets easier to hold it in. So this will be, we're coming up on my second holidays. Through the first holidays, I mean, I was a wreck. I couldn't walk into a store. I couldn't
Right.
walk into a gas station. I couldn't be around things that remind. I didn't. Halloween has always been one of my favorite holidays. I didn't leave my house. I didn't go outside. I didn't talk to nobody. I sat at home. You know,
Hmm.
um, it's nothing. Nothing's the same. Everything.
Right.
Everything changes.
It does.
Everything. When
I
they were taken a week before, trying to walk into a store and even being in public.
It was just so, I mean, obviously Christmas is normally, we all know it's about the children, right?
Yeah,
And
and
wow.
at that point, like, you're used to stopping at the store and grabbing something for your kids while you're there. Like,
Right.
being a mom, how often do
Right.
you ever walk into a store and not walk out with something for your kids?
Exactly. Because they're gonna always want
You know,
something.
so it's like
Right.
I mean, and that's been like I've gotten better. at holding it in, at least because like I've constantly been trying to focus on court and trying to focus on, I talk to a lot of people. People will call me and ask about their rights. I'm really good at looking things up, so I try my best to like help people look things up. So
Right.
I've gotten better on trying to focus on that.
Hmm. Okay. It is. I mean, it's a forever thorn in your in your flesh. It is. It's a forever void. So, with that being said, I'm glad you mentioned that, Brittany. We actually have a clip of the video where you were actually featured on the news, where it's showing that even the media has been trying to reach out to help you recover your children back. And Grace, if you're ready, I would like to please go ahead and show that clip. Okay, I'm not sure if Grace is ready. So, but until it is, I can definitely go on to ask,
Rarely
some
straightforward. Investigative reporter Margaret Kavanaugh reveals some of the problems one state agency is working to shed light on.
Instead of getting help for what happened, I ended up with the ultimate punishment.
Help with what she calls mental issues. Brittany Woodworth admits she lied to police about domestic violence, but says the string of events that unfolded after caused her to lose custody of her 2 children who were given to a relative she says she has a strained relationship with.
It's shocking. It's appalling.
Delegate A.C. Cordoza from Hampton has been trying to help her.
There is a clear mishandling of the case by some officials.
We reached out to the Hampton Department of Human Services, who issued a statement saying they legally can't talk about specific cases, but say they try hard to make all reasonable efforts to keep children with their parents whenever it is safely possible and in the best interest of the child or children. When that cannot be achieved, relative placement options may be deemed more suitable, or as a last resort, they say a child may be brought into their custody. The Office of the Children's Ombudsman, an agency created to investigate cases involving children in the system, found issues with how Whitworth's case was handled. The agency gathers and reviews complaints, but has no legal authority to make change. To date, they say they've received about 600 complaints from around the state, identifying potential violations of policies or laws in about 15% of the cases. Many times when children are taken, they're either put in foster care or alternative living arrangements, which puts them with someone that they know, like a relative.
We saw a lot of those cases just not handled well.
Back in June, we shared Whitworth's story, and then we had people from across the state reaching out to us with their own problems about their personal situations.
I just want to know, what can I do to get my grandchildren back? I have done no wrong. I haven't done nothing.
After hearing testimony from CPS, a judge ruled against Marilyn Morgan and decided that placing her grandkids in the custody of social services was in their best interest. She lost her court appeals. The Ombudsman's office reviewed her dealings with CPS, not the court decision, and found problems with policy violations and issues with the children being removed.
I wake up some nights and I wonder, did they feed her? Did they hug her like I do? Did they tell her I love her?
Morgan adamantly denies ever abusing or neglecting her grandchildren. Her attorney sent a letter to the governor asking him for help.
There's nowhere to go. There's nobody to help.
This mother says she's been fighting to get her kids back. The Ombudsman's office found there was a lack of clarity in the beginning of her case, which they state is a problem across Virginia, but also say they didn't find any policy violations. We've reached out to the local agency in this case, who couldn't talk about specifics, but did say assessing safety and risk is a continual process in CPS, which they take seriously.
We go to court again in November.
Among other issues across the state, the Ombudsman's office found significant legal issues concerning parents' constitutional rights in certain situations.
Some of these temporary arrangements should last about 3 or 4 months, right? But some of these cases were going on for years.
The Virginia Department of Social Services develops the regulations and policies for the 120 social service departments across the state. But the report found that they are limited in ensuring quality, consistency, and effectiveness.
These local agencies don't have any clear oversight. Even though the ombudsman process exists, It's just to shine a light on, hey, this is wrong, but sorry, we can't do anything about it. And that just doesn't cut it.
Other problems cited in the report: turnover rates among caseworkers and a lack of training.
Let me make it clear. The majority of CPS workers are doing a great job and are doing heroic actions every day. The issue is when there is a lack of staff.
Officials in Hampton say parents have the right to appeal all decisions regarding the placement of a child outside of parental custody through the appropriate judicial process. Delegate Cordoza says he's exploring possible legislation changes that could improve the system. He thinks there should be a focus on fixing problems and keeping families together, and says too often that's not happening.
It's shocking, it's appalling, and it's completely unacceptable. And that's another reason there must be something done. And I intend on making sure that happens.
For these women, every day is a struggle, longing to see the children that they love. I reached out to the Virginia Department of Social Services 3 weeks ago and asked how many kids are in alternative living arrangements across the state and how those cases are handled. Later, I reached out again to learn more about the processes that DSS uses to investigate child custody cases. They have been responsive, but said they needed more time to gather the information that we are requesting. Wednesday, they said they hope to have an answer by the end of this week. Marilyn Morgan's case is based in Lynchburg. There, they said they can't talk about specifics of a case, but said that any time a child is removed from the home, it is a last resort, and said they try to keep families together. Now, if you would like to read the responses from all the agencies in our investigation, go to our website at WTKR.com. Margaret Kavanaugh for News 3.
Wow. Thank you so much, Grace, for sharing that clip. I think it provides a lot of information on what this system, this broken, corrupt CPS system, is continuing to get away with. And I thank God that Brittany, your story, along Lord knows thousands of others, didn't even get that opportunity, but you was able to share your story to hopefully, bring people in to see how Black this whole of CPS and corrupt they really are, and what change is needed quickly to help you be able to recover back with your life, with getting your children back home. And with that being said, Brittany, can you tell me, have your parental rights, have they been terminated?
No. They did they did what they like to refer to as shadow foster care.
Can you explain to the listening audience what that is?
So shadow foster care is where they take the children from you and they place them with like a family member or a kinship placement or like a fictive kin. And because they're technically with a relative, they're not actually in foster care. Like, it's not the same as being in foster care. They're
Right.
in the system, but they're not in the system.
Right.
And a lot of times that results in a custody transfer, like through the courts.
Hmm.
But so, for instance, where I live, okay,
Mhm.
because the children were originally taken through an emergency removal order through the foster care system, even though it's not foster care,
Mm-hmm.
it still stays in the exact same foster care side of court.
Wow. Okay, so literally they're with family or friends.
Well, see, that's where this issue comes in. And it's one of those things where there is no black and white across the board, because you might have a family where a kinship placement or a family placement is absolutely the best option to keep the kids in family. The whole family's working together.
Uh-huh.
Everything's good.
Uh-huh.
But then you have situations like mine where it's vindictive kin that has placed the calls into CPS that end up with your
Oh my
children.
God. I never thought about it like that, because that happens too. Wow.
Most commonly, a lot of calls like that comes from a family member, a friend getting mad. You've got schools, different mandated reporters. But I mean, a lot of calls that come in, people get mad and pick up the phone. I mean, it's sad, but unfortunately, it's true.
It's very true. And actually, like you just said, oh my God, I had a show not too long ago where here in Texas that they seen that was being so much done. So where, like you say, people who don't like you for whatever reason or have something against you personally or in their feelings or being petty, however you want to word it, they will use CPS as a weapon against you, right?
Right.
But thank God here recently, one of the government agencies, since it's been such an epidemic, that they're realizing, hey, a lot of these parents, it's nothing they're doing wrong. It's just they're just mad at the parents for whatever reasons, and they're using CPS, which is a government system that money is being utilized, that you're wasting tax dollars for you and your feelings. So now they're getting it where if they find out evidence justified that you didn't have a substantial reason to call CPS on whatever parent, that you can go to jail behind it.
That
You
would
know,
but that needs to be implemented like everywhere. I mean,
absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you.
that
And
is
maybe,
definitely a step in the right direction because like
yes,
just like it was like in the news, I mean, there is no accountability anywhere. You
right.
know, along my journey of this, I've talked I've tried to make points of contact, and the amount of information that you find out that like the states know. You know, when I spoke to the state program director here in Virginia, I guess that's what they call her, somewhere in the governor's office,
Hmm.
this woman went on to admit to me, you know, oh, I don't want to take it to that level, but this is a systematic problem. And it's not just a problem here in Virginia, it's a problem all across the country. But
Absolutely.
the way that the systems are designed, and it's a two-part system because you have CPS administratively doing what they're doing on their side. And
Right.
once they draw those courts in, well, CPS, once they've convinced the judge,
Hmm.
the only thing that's going to overturn the judge's orders is a judge. CPS has no control over that. And
Right.
it's played that way. So even if you're clear on one side of the board, they still have you on the other.
Absolutely. And that's why it is a broken, corrupt system.
It really is. And you know, bringing up like so many stories that don't get heard, it's because you know when you try to call and you try to discuss CPS with like the news or regular news stations, they
Mhm.
automatically assume that you're just an angry person, that you know, and it's a custody dispute or a custody case or something along those lines. And the news doesn't want to get involved in a custody case. And
Correct.
a lot of times, often people don't know their rights ahead of time in order to get and have actual evidence of all of the different frauds and the perjuries and things. You know, those times are changing thanks to cell
Absolutely.
phones, you
Hmm.
know, cell
Yes,
phones and social
cameras.
media. You
Right.
know, that we're getting but we're still not there. It's still happening every day that somebody doesn't know that they can record, that somebody doesn't know they don't have to open the door, you
You
know, that
just said,
somebody doesn't know these things and they get tricked right into the fall line of the CPS system.
absolutely. You just hit the hammer on the nail, Brittany. A lot of people don't know their rights. And that's like you just said, how a lot of people, because to me, what my experience was, like if the sooner you can get out of the vicious cycle with them, the better off you'll be. Because even the cycle is so crazy where the longer you stay in it, you could be doing everything they ask you to do as far as your, what is it, your service plans or, whatever and it might not even be something that, like I said, I just give this one small example. I've never done drugs in my life, but I had to consistently take drug tests. I had to consistently do drug tests. But it's just like if you don't abide to whatever their, whatever courses or classes or services they ask you to take, and the longer it's delayed, the longer your children are in there where they can actually be adopted out. So it's
And
sick
that's
to me that it's on a time clock even.
and that's how, but that's also how they lord that power over you when they
Yes.
don't even technically have the right to. And then the other aspect that you have is when you do, like if you're already dragged into the system and you start standing up for your rights, they start trying to punish you for standing
They
up for your rights.
retaliate. Yes, they can. They will try that. That's why I say it depends on your caseworker because I have seen good and I have seen bad. And unfortunately, I had a bad one. I did, but
So
go ahead. What you say,
that
Brittany?
that's exactly how I got blindsided, because the same woman that called on me this time called 10
Mhm.
years prior,
Oh my
except
God.
10 years prior, you know, the woman that showed up, as much as I've seen bad social workers out there, I will stand by the fact of the day that that woman was an angel. She
Wow.
was she was the epitome of what a social worker was supposed to be. It wasn't you're going to jump through every hoop I tell you to. It's my
Right,
job
right.
as a social worker. I'm going to jump through every hoop that I know I can in my
That's the way
department
it's
to try to
supposed to
help you.
be. Right. That
Okay.
part. Yeah.
So this time around, I was completely blindsided. I was completely blindsided to the fact that there were bad apples in those departments.
They are. Unfortunately, they are. If they lack integrity, or like you just described, if that caseworker is on a power trip and
Mhm.
she's throwing her weight around, and it's Lord knows what can happen. Because again,
It's
obviously they're not on your side, right? Seem
and
like.
that's scary. No person in this world should have the authority or the power to reign over somebody like that.
Correct.
Nobody.
Especially when you're
Nobody at
talking
all.
about your children, your lives and souls, your
It's
legacy. I mean,
it's a protected civil liberty for a reason.
exactly. There you go. Absolutely. Well said. Oh, and again, and that's something that I think I would like to just say as well, that I think is so important that you know your rights. It makes sense I would recommend, if you can, to hire an attorney. I know sometimes it's easily said than done. Don't get me wrong, because I know, it's a fee that comes with that. But I've always been also told, when my grandmother and mom raised me, you get what you pay for. And some things are worth the sacrifice. Actually, I sacrifice really my home. I sacrifice a relationship. I sacrifice so much because, again, your children, my God, I don't know how else to say it, but it's your legacy, it's your lifeline. They're going to represent you when you're dead and gone. And it's just something that can't be replaced. I can replace a house, I can get another home,
Mhm.
but I can't get another child. So again, so I will say, starting out, I didn't have an attorney, but I had saved. I had, if you got to work an extra job, even a paralegal, sometimes they can supply information that can be helpful if you're not aware of your rights, whatever it takes. And I say that, Brittany, to say this. I know you've even started a GoFundMe, to help you be able to hire an attorney to help represent you, to be able to get your children back. And Grace, if before the show ends, if you can please, if it's okay, I would like to share your GoFundMe page, or link rather, so people that's hearing your story today or tomorrow, whenever they get a chance to tune in, it will be a way to help Brittany win her children and get her children back home, because her rights have not been terminated. They
So
have not been.
here's also a lesson in why it's good to get help from somebody that knows what they're doing.
Okay.
Okay. Um, all of my stuff has been through certain courts and everything, and I was told that in order to get things moved on, I needed to get my case back in front of the judge so that I could prove, what was going on.
Right.
So I've studied and I've studied and I've studied and I've looked at the laws and I've looked up case laws and I've put together these documents and these motions, and I filed them in court. My court date was set out until November because the judge very much requested that I seek out counsel so that somebody that understood the complexity of what was going on could help me in what I was doing as I stood in the courtroom pro se and tried to
Right.
do it myself.
Okay.
And I might have looked up and studied all the laws, and I might have learned the laws, like your rights and your different things about that. But you know what? I didn't even look at, and
What's that?
I'm not an attorney, so I have no idea what they are. The rules of court, the rules of evidence, the rules of submitting documents, the
It's
rules
a
of
lot.
addressing people in court.
Yeah.
So I mean, that there's definitely, like you said, lawyers. There's now, one of the issues, like for instance, that we have is here in Virginia, there's not very many lawyers that will actually take on legitimate cases that have issues like this.
Really?
A lot of the majority of the lawyers here fall in line with that. Just do whatever they tell you. Doesn't matter
Really?
if your rights are being violated. Doesn't matter if the law is being broken. Just do what they tell you.
Oh, that's scary.
It is. It's very scary. So my first attorney we paid for and retained. Not one single piece of my evidence was handed to the judge. Not one piece of my evidence was seen in court. After using up all of my funds that had been paid and stuff in 2 court hearings, she tried to charge me more money And when I didn't pay the money that she wanted, she showed up on the third court hearing. And literally, I had sent over a stack of evidence like this. And she showed up with a little file folder that was about this big.
Wow.
And said a couple of statements, waved a couple of papers around, and my case ended. At that point, I was still in the court system at the point where the courts would appoint one for me. It took me 2.5 months of going around with the circuit court clerks who told me that circuit court couldn't appoint attorney. The ombudsman, who you saw in the video, their office actually provided me with the legal codes for Virginia that stated they had to give me an attorney for the case.
Wow.
That attorney instructed me that my evidence wasn't allowed to be submitted, even though it was. So I've been through 4 court hearings in front of 2 judges, and not a single judge has ever seen a piece of evidence.
Brittany, this sounds like a show on Lifetime. I'm so serious. I mean, this is madness. This is pure madness. It's almost like they almost don't want you to get your kids back. And that's why I say it's connected to money, power, and politics.
So get this. Throughout the course of that,
Wow.
CPS founded me. You know how they do their CPS findings?
Mm-hmm.
I was founded for level 2 physical neglect, inadequate supervision. Okay. I was put on the state abuse registry, abuse and neglect registry. Okay. We appealed through CPS,
Mm-hmm.
and at state level, they unfounded the decision.
Really?
So they unfounded me for neglect and said that there wasn't even enough hearsay evidence found in the record or any testimony to constitute any type of neglect. I was taken off the registry. And when I brought it into court, the city was still willing to stand behind their opinion of fighting me to get my children home.
But how can they do that if you had what was just previously shared? There was no findings to justify what they said. How can they still hold it against you?
I feel like that's the $1 million question.
Oh my God. I'm sorry. I had to move around on that because oh my God. Oh Lord. So
Yeah.
wow. I just want to say this, Brittany, and oh my God. Oh Jesus.
And,
Okay.
and that's separate from the ombudsman's report. You know, that's another stigma that I feel like a lot of people have. A lot of people have this stigma that CPS gives families all of these chances and all of these services and all of these different things to help keep families together. The very first finding of my ombudsman's report was that not a single service was offered to my family to prevent the removal of my children.
Brittany, I honestly don't see how you shouldn't be able to get your kids back. I honestly don't see why they hadn't been back already a long time ago.
Right
Because there's
now,
so many holes in your story.
I feel like because it needs to be in front of a judge, that's
It
kind of where
does.
my dilemma is I need somebody that has the legal eyes that I don't have to look
Absolutely.
over this evidence, to look over this case, and to either show me how or to present it to the judge correctly so that he sees what unfolded here.
Right, absolutely. Because
Like
it's a
I
lot of
feel
holes in the story. Yes,
Yeah, because
absolutely.
at this point, like I tell people, it's not even my word against theirs. It's the state word against theirs.
That's what it sounds like. And can I ask you this? This is something that just crossed my mind. Do you have an option where you can transfer your case to a different court, to a different location?
I think that if you're like able to prove some type of a bias or something like that, you could. That would have to be more with the judge. And I'm going to say that honestly, like I know that a lot of people have issues with judges and different things like that in their cases. But I think that the major issue in my case is the fact that none of the actual evidence was ever shown to the judge. So as far as the judge knows, he's never seen anything. All he knows is what CPS has told him. And my 2 attorneys that didn't really do anything.
But to me, that seemed like it is bias because they
So
do
that's
have this
why
information no one is looking into.
there's actually an appeal that I had filed that's still sitting at the 3-panel judges of Virginia because they got about an 8-month backup log
Oh
on
my
giving
God.
dates for appeals. And the entire briefing that was submitted by that appointed attorney is basically, how do we have a case sitting here with no evidence?
That's what I'm saying. Exactly.
There's none. There's none anywhere. The only evidence that was on there was the emergency removal order that they put into place, which, I now have video recording showing that that was perjured information,
Right.
that the information in it was inaccurate and
Mhm.
incorrect. I mean, this is recorded information from the state,
Wow.
and
I
it's just
saw
like,
that. And to me, that's evidence in itself. But I'm listening. Go on, please.
but it's crazy, but that's why they run those two-part systems like that together.
Right.
Because even though CPS now says I didn't abuse my kids, well, they've already convinced the judge that I did.
Right. It's like a double-ended sword. I
It
can't get you
absolutely
this way.
is.
I get you the other way. Yeah.
Hmm.
Wow. Wow. Do you know if there is, like earlier I was mentioning here in Texas, like they give you a certain amount of time that's allowed it that you have to complete whatever it is, like I said, your caseworker, your services have for you to do. If you don't do it, I think it might be 12 months or a year here in Texas. It's a very short time span to, God, to have
Because
a time. Hmm.
because what they did to me doing the shadow foster care, I was never offered a case plan. I was never offered a reunification plan. I was never offered any services. My children were involuntarily coerced into respite for 21 days. On day 21, they moved for an emergency removal order. The very first court date was January 7th of 2022. The very last court date was February 28th of 2022.
Wow.
It was open and shut.
So they didn't give any other type of options whatsoever.
None.
Wow. Let me ask you.
The ombudsman concluded the report in saying that there were no options or remedies granted on how to return the children. None.
So it's like they weren't even planning to return them. If they don't give you some type of, once you complete this or do this, and then,
Yeah,
you can be
there
reunified.
was
So it was nothing of that extent.
nothing at all. And
Wow.
and the crazier thing is they gave me that in writing. They literally wrote out, "We do not have to offer you these services because your children are not in foster care," is what they said.
With that being said, Brittany, you might have already answered this question, but did they say anything about as far as by your rights, thank God, have not been terminated, but did they'll say anything like it can be done if nothing is done with your case in 4 years? Was there any
No.
type of disclaimers or anything like that?
Mm-mm.
So how do
No,
you know what the time
my
frame is?
understanding is the way that they did that because they transferred custody. At
Okay.
some later point, you can refile custody, but
Mhm.
refiling custody in my state means you're proving a change in circumstance. So
Mm,
what my confusion is right now is okay, so the circumstances that you took my children were already proven to be untrue. So what circumstances are supposed to be changed?
correct. Right. Yeah. I will say this, Brittany. I know when I first started out, I had no idea the Pandora box that was open dealing with CPS. And I thought that, oh, okay, I can pretty much comprehend pretty decently. I can handle this myself until, like you said, you get in there and it's all kind of different state laws and different things that you have to prove your case and continuation of even more information. So I said, okay, this is outside my pay grade. I had enough sense to realize I was in over my head. Went through 5 attorneys, but I must say, and some of them was the ones, like you say, the courts assign you. I think it's pro bono or something like that. But from my experience, it seemed like they were all in with the court system.
Hmm.
And
The
I
buddy
could watch,
system.
what'd you say, Brittany?
The buddy system.
The buddy system, exactly. So I was
Yeah,
looking in court. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. It's almost as if they were going to have lunch once the court the hearing was over
absolutely.
that day. So I'm like, oh, no,
Absolutely.
no, no, no. This is not going to work. And I'm looking at the body language as well as listening to the information they're not providing correctly. And I even had one of the attorneys tell me, pro bono attorneys tell me, well, worst case scenario, if your child is adopted out, then you can go see them anytime. I immediately got another attorney. Because if that is your mind frame, that's obviously telling me you're not going to work to get to reunite me back with my child.
Yeah.
So with that being said, it took 5 attorneys, but the last attorney I must share, I do believe what helped to change the trajectory of my story dealing with CPS, she was an attorney that was extremely aggressive. Not only aggressive, but she knew the CPS laws. And knowledge is power.
Oh
And
yeah.
once you know what somebody else know, they can't tell you anything. So she had that, like, oh my God. And she even had information that I wasn't even aware of that she presented to the judge. And once the judge heard it, the CPS had to backpedal. So again, I do know CPS obviously does not always operate out of integrity. If it's a caseworker that's petty, it's personal, they're on a power trip, they're normally are not the ones that's going to really try to fight to get your kids back. They might try to keep you unfortunately separated from each other. Why? Because money, power, and politics. So I'm sorry. It just took me back to being in that courtroom that day, and that was a horror that I have never experienced in my life. I'm someone, I have buried a mom, my father, a brother. Been through a lot of horror in life. I'm not going to lie. I've been through it, but CPS has a different sting. It's a different pain.
And it doesn't. It leaves so much different post-traumatic stress from it and different things like,
Oh God, yes.
and nothing is ever the same once you deal with that age. Nothing at all.
Nothing.
Not a knock at the door, not a phone call, not the way somebody looked at you while you were out with your children. It creates a sense of unsafety. I mean,
It does.
of not being safe. And then it's like, most of the time they show up with the police. So who do you call? Who do you call to save you and your family from what it is that they do? Who do you call?
Who do you call? Because we normally have to go to the government or the state for protection. And a lot of times too, Brittany, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I wished I would have known this at the time I had my encounter with CPS. But I've had paralegals and a lot of quality of women and men like a woman like yourself that have came on the show. She shared, a paralegal actually was on the show that shared that you don't have to open the door. If they do not have a court order, a warrant, a court order where the judge has signed off on it.
That's where that comes back into that stigma. Okay. And I want to, this is something that needs to be doubly expressed.
Please.
That idea that if you ask for a lawyer or you say no, makes you guilty of something is wrong. That is not wrong. You are not guilty of something for protecting your rights and asking for a lawyer if the police or a social worker wants to speak to you. You are not guilty of something because you turn them away and tell them to come back with a warrant.
Right.
You are not admitting to guilt. You are not looking more guilty. You are protecting your rights and your family.
That's right.
We are indoctrinated to believe that seeking out that help makes us guilty.
Right. And it does not. It does not.
No.
And I think a lot of times the ones that operate out, the CPS caseworkers who do not have integrity, they actually bank on you not knowing your rights.
Absolutely.
They do. They truly do. And I think, again, that's why I say it's important to read up, go to legal aid or wherever your state have access to these libraries or calling, because sometimes there are free legal aid systems. But again, like I said, I know you get what you pay for. And sometimes just because it's free does not mean that it's effective. The attorney may not be as effective.
And so that's another reason I love these shows, because it's helped breaking that stigma that these people are always right and that you must have done something to deserve this. Because the more people that come out and explain what's really going on, and people aren't just explaining, people are recording it now. Yeah. They are recording it and they are showing what's happening. Yes. And the more eyes they get woke up, the less power they're going to have.
Absolutely. That, you know what, you said it perfectly, Brittany, by exposing these people on these shows, bringing these stories to the forefront, like you say, having your camera, your phone. I've seen a recent video where a lady, they were trying to kidnap a baby at the hospital, and I mean, from the jump, they're trying to kidnap these children. So, and they had them on camera. And I noticed that when they pressed that play button and that record light came on, they were not as quick to say certain things, because they were being recorded. And she told them, I am going to present this to the news. So,
Yeah.
So again, they can't easily get away with things like they once did because no one knew about it. It was done behind the table. So again, I thank you so much, Brittany, for coming on and sharing your story today. I would like to also ask you, what is it, before we wrap up today, what is it that you would like to see done, or what do you think that's needed that will help you get your kids back home with you where they belong?
Right now, the main thing is to try to get an attorney or some type of like a paralegal or somebody that knows how to look at evidence and what motions or whatever it is that needs to be done correctly with what I have. We go back to court in November. The
November.
judge
Okay.
wanted me to have tried to have counsel or at least spoken with representation by then to kind of straighten out the web that is the case. I've done the majority of getting all of the evidence and everything, but again, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the court lingo. I don't know the court motions. I don't know what this fraud is or what that fraud is. I focused mainly on, hey, this is parental rights laws. This is, children's laws. This is family laws.
Right.
And now I'm at a point that I need help in the actual courtroom.
Correct. Yes. And I do know that is, to me, it's mandatory, I almost wish, like, they provide, say, for example, COVID, they were giving out free COVID tests because they knew how, if you didn't get the test, or, what I'm trying to say, let me take that back. When they noticed that things were getting so out of hands, they were actually providing aid to help you with money, to pay bills and things like that. I wish that same thing would apply for children in the CPS system. Give people adequate help, not just somebody that's just going to be a front for you.
It's interesting, though, if you go back and you look at all the changes of the Families First Act in 2018, there is actually money that is supposed to be allotted for that. And
Really?
it's either Kansas or Arkansas is now one of the first states to actually request funding from the government for
Really?
programs directed at putting children and their families, keeping them together.
Wow.
They drafted a plan for it in 2020, and they followed a group home foster care. Now, granted, this group home, like foster care setting, it already had a pretty high reunification rate. It was somewhere between like 76 or like 84% reunification rate, like was already there. When they implemented these funds into that program that they were following, it rose to a 99% reunification rate.
Really?
Yes.
That speaks volume.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that there were changes made into that funding, and a lot of those changes that were made, it's another thing that people don't know, was meant to help aid the families to get the funding. But if your state's not participating, your state's not drafting the plans, it's just still funneling right back into CPS and the agencies.
I have never ever heard of that before. So you saying even with that type of assistance, which I think needs to be in every state, that children were reunified back with the families because of that aid.
Yep. Most of CPS cases start from some sort of neglect based on poverty. People don't realize that.
Right.
And it's crazy because we'll take a family that didn't have running water, and then we'll pay a different family to take care of that child. Yeah. The money you paid that other family could have went into that natural family.
Right. Absolutely.
And you could have helped aid the way to keep them together.
Correct. And you wouldn't have caused all that stress,
trauma,
and yes, and as well as the parents. And I've never understood that. I had a lady that worked personally for CPS. She would be the supervisor of the visits. And she told me one of her clients, the reason why the child was removed because the parents got behind on the electric bill. They ran short of the money, but instead of helping them pay the bill, they permanently removed the child from the home over
Yeah,
a light bill.
it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And then that's, it's hard again to fight that stigma. Oh, well, then you should have been doing better. But I'm sorry, I don't support ableism. Not everybody has access to the same things or the same abilities, or you know what I'm saying? Like there's circumstances, nothing like that is
Life, Brittany. Yeah,
yeah,
that's life. That's like, for example, my mom had cancer 3 different times. And do you think that's something she wanted? Do you think people
yeah,
that's dealing with diseases or illnesses or whatever, that's something they wanted? Unfortunately, that's life.
yeah,
Sometimes it comes with the good and the bad. So you can't always, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
some people are rich, some people are not. So, but it's
right,
still life. And so no one should be held at a lower standard or
exactly.
mistreated or their children removed because they're not at a certain level. We are all at different levels of life. We all at different seasons of life. So you have really, I'm going to look into that some more, what you just said with that state. And I'm hoping and praying that that can also be, something need to be done where that need to be implemented in more states.
It does.
But you know what gets me, and I'm gonna say this, Brittany, and I have really enjoyed our show, and I'm gonna bring you back whenever I know you got to be in court in November. I would love to get an update. I'm hoping and
Okay.
praying that an attorney or a paralegal or someone who has the heart that's willing to help you, because to me, it just seemed like if the right set of eyes is laid on your case, who knows CPS laws and who is aggressive and determined, that it seems like your story can turn around for the good and your children will be returned back home to you.
I
And
absolutely agree with you.
I really do
100%.
believe that. I do. I really do. So that's why I tell you to never give up on fighting for your kids, because it's not over yet. It is
Nope.
not. And I just want to encourage you, because I know during those times when you're in that transition, it's easy to get down. It's easy to get depressed, discouraged. You feel bad about yourself. You're not a good parent, but you are a good parent. It happens to the best of us.
Yeah,
So sometimes God will take something like this to let you turn around and be somebody, an advocate to help others get their children back. You know,
that's the goal.
oh yeah. Oh yeah, because you've been through it. You know it personally firsthand. What better experience than your own personal experience?
Right.
Okay. So again,
And like you said, knowledge is power. Even if the
oh
only thing I
God.
can do is help spread the education of people's rights, I'm with that too.
Absolutely. The more you know, the better it is. If you can stop CPS from the beginning, then they won't have a long line or years to continue on with keeping your children away from you. So the sooner, the better. So I just say, Brittany, again, if we're not able to show your information, what is your social media page? Because I noticed you post a lot of your information there.
So on Facebook, you can just find me under my name. Probably come up Brittany M. Whitworth, and I think TikTok it comes up. It's just at BMW 88420 or 42088. But it just says Brittany.
Okay.
So the news clip that you played is one of the pinned videos on there, and those are mainly the two social medias that I'm on. I try to keep Facebook seems to shadow ban most things when it comes to
Yeah.
CPS.
Yeah.
So, a lot of times most of the updates that aren't written will go to TikTok.
Right, right. But you have a lot of valuable information. Actually, that's where I saw your story was on your social media page. And I said, oh my
Yeah.
God, I would love to speak with her.
I
Yeah.
also have a collection up there of case laws that are like pertaining to like different type of family law cases.
Right.
So if you need like reference guides for finding different case laws and things, there's some of those up there as well too.
Great. That is some great information that I do know from the responses that you get from the comments that people are looking at what you're saying, and it is helping. So yes, thank you so much, Brittany, for being on our show today. And like I said, I would like to follow up with you after your next court hearing in November, and hopefully it is some good news that's coming your way. So stay
Let's keep hoping and praying for that. And thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. I most definitely will. Okay, again, thank you once again for tuning in to the Beautifully Bruised and CPS show. I am your host, Latrika Jones. Please don't never give up for fighting for your kids, and please keep God first and have a blessed weekend.